Yes, good day. Today is the 27th of October. It is Tuesday, and we are going to finish up the Hellenic period of Greek history. Now, for your test, remember that there are two periods of Greek history. There is the Hellenic period, which we've been studying, which is simply the period of history when Greek was divided up into, you know, somewhere around 1,000 city-states scattered across Greece, all of them independent, all of them making war on each other. The next period that we'll study, beginning Thursday, will be the Hellenistic period. That is the period of time when Greece is dominated by Alexander the Great, who, once again, many people think of as being Greek, but he is not Greek. He's actually Macedonian. Macedonia is a province to the north of Greece. But we'll talk about him later. But anyway, so yeah, let's talk about Plato and Aristotle and philosophy. So where are we? Yes, pop that up. So Socrates, philosophy begins with Socrates. Socrates' best student was Plato, who didn't always agree with him. Plato's best student was Aristotle, who didn't always agree with him. And so it goes Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. Okay. Socrates wrote no books. So actually, we really only know of his teachings primarily only through the work of his best student, Plato, who did write two large major books. Actually, three. One was called Utopia. But anyway, he wrote a book called Apology, and Apology is a book that concerns itself with the trial of the trial of Socrates, where he was accused of corrupting the youth of Athens and condemned to die by drinking poison hemlock. Phaedo was that execution. Phaedo basically concerned the last conversation that Socrates had. And in the last conversation, Socrates sat there and he, of course, had drank the hemlock. And once again, what hemlock does is that it inhibits the ability of the body to process oxygen, beginning with the outer extremities and working its way into the internal and necessary vital organs. And he describes the whole thing. Plato believed in idealistic absolutes. That means that truth, beauty, and other such qualities could be defined with exact certainty, which is something that Socrates did not agree with, by the way. What is truth? What is beauty? He urged philosophers be trained in mathematics and to dedicate themselves to the pursuit of exactness in the measurement of the world. Man is the measure of all things. Of course, Plato's greatest work was a book called The Republic. And in The Republic, we become acquainted with this place called Utopia, Utopia, which in ancient Greeks, the word utopia literally translates into no place, a place that doesn't exist. Today, of course, when we say utopia, it means the ideal place. Probably because Plato discussed it as a place that would be ideal. Well, what was Plato's Republic, his utopia? It describes an ideal society. In such a place, naturally, the leadership of society would not be kings, monarchs, generals, people like that. It would be the philosopher, the intelligentsia of society. And such leaders would care for little for power or wealth, and they would care primarily for knowledge. Society would involve three tiers of individuals. The philosopher kings, I hope you see the irony that Plato puts himself, there at the rule of society. Military guardians who would enforce the edicts of the kings, and artisans who would do all the work. Yeah. Now, another thing that Plato writes about is something called the allegory of the cave. You say, what's that? It's one of his famous ideologies, the allegory of the cave. He writes about a circumstance whereby a bunch of people go into a cave, and in the cave is lit by firelight, and the people see their own shadows cast upon the wall by the firelight, and they have suspicions of the shadows. They don't understand who the shadows are. They think the shadows are some kind of mysterious beings. And so, yeah. By the way, in reality, I don't get philosophy. Um, I actually had a friend when I went to college who majored in philosophy. I think he now works for Starbucks. And I'm not making fun of philosophy, but in reality, with a philosophy degree, what can you do? You can teach philosophy. Anyway, and I don't get it. I don't get it, Maybe it's too hard for me. Okay, now the prime student of Plato was Aristotle. Aristotle, um, doctrine of the mean, for example, he challenged the teachings of his predecessor Plato. And what happened to Aristotle, though, was at some point in time during the multiple invasions of Greece by the Macedonians, he was captured by Philip II, Philip, the king of Macedonia, and he became the tutor of Alexander the Great. Yeah. And Aristotle and Alexander the Great, he taught him everything he knew. And one of the one of the offshoots of that, and it's worth knowing, that as Aristotle was being tutored by Alexander the Great, Aristotle came to really admire Greek culture, everything about it, Greek language, to admire, the way Greeks did things, not only the Greek gods, but the Greek idiosyncrasies, the Greek sports, the Greek um, male, whatever. But yeah, and here that's important because when we talk about the Hellenistic period, when we talk about Alexander the Great going out and in a 10-year span conquering the known world at the age by the age of 33, he will do that not only to conquer territory, but he wanted to spread Greek culture. And I mean, he wanted people to learn the Greek culture as he had learned it because he sincerely believed it would make them better people. Anyway, Aristotle's primary goal was to describe and analyze the world as it actually was and to define it. That actually hurts your hands after a while. To analyze the world as it actually was and define it, particularly in a mathematical and a logical manner. This kind of thinking will later on again um, be revitalized, be revived in the Enlightenment, the ideas of the classical Greeks and Romans. Aristotle is called the father of logic. Another thing I don't understand. When I was going through my test taking stage is going from undergraduate to graduate degrees, I had to take tests, and one of the areas I had to take tests in was logic, and yeah, it was not logical. He was the author of the doctrine of the mean, which is at the core of many Greek philosophies. You say, what does that mean? The doctrine of the mean. The doctrine of the mean, and many other, not just philosophies, but also religions, is about moderation. All things in moderation. Yeah, never do anything excessively, but at the same time, don't deny yourself. Never get too happy, but don't walk around sad. Later on, it'll become known as Stoicism, but yeah, the doctrine of the mean, keeping an even tempo. He also wrote two books, one called Ethics and the other called Poetics. Okay. Forgive me, it's just too long here. I'm about to go home anyway. So, we are going to talk about the Hellenistic period, which is the period of Alexander the Great. And Alexander the Great only ruled for about 10 years. Well, more than that. Alexander the Great became the king of Macedonia at 17 when his father was assassinated right in front of him. And he assumed the kingship of Macedonia and then became Alexander the Great Conqueror. And in doing so, he is going to conquer the known world, which at the time included Greece, Turkey, Asia Minor, the old Persian Empire of Xerxes. He conquers it. Egypt. In fact, he gets all the way to the gates of India before his soldiers, who had been on the road for 10 years, just said, "Dude, we're just not going anymore." But yeah, we're going to stop now and take a look at a short video about the life of Alexander. And no, we are not going to script it. You guys have done that enough. But in learning about it, you could see some of it from the test. And so, yeah, stop sharing.